what has happened? What has transpired? What did you already kind of say what was going to happen? And then what happened with the Supreme Court today?
So no, it's not just me, and I'm going to give, a shout out to Brianna Joy Gray, because this is
Absolutely.
So just to kind of give a very quick timeline, Elizabeth Warren back in 2020, so fall 2020, she wrote a memo to the Harvard Legal Counsel, basically asking, does the president have authority to cancel student loan debt? So basically, through all the legalese, basically in the way of using the Higher Education Act, the council said he does. So fast forward to, I think, January, February 2021, shortly after Biden was sworn in. She and Ayanna Pressley, those are the two that I remember, wrote a memo to Biden basically saying, use the Higher Education Act to cancel student loan debt. Biden sat on his ass for over a year and a half until August of 2022, when he made the executive order to cancel student loan debt using the HEROES Act. Now, September, Brianna Joy Gray had Jed Sugarman on Bad Faith. Mm-hmm. And they had the discussion that he basically said Biden should have used the Higher Education Act as the basis for canceling student debt, which would have been a broad, across-the-board thing. There would have been any need to mean test the policy as they did. So that was when, this was back in last September, when that was basically the beginning of me, when I heard that podcast, basically being like, oh shit, like, this is no way going to go through. So Biden used that to get young people out in the midterms. Shortly, 2 days after that, they received a challenge in a couple of courts in, I forgot which states right now, that they made a challenge. So basically all of that ended up in the Supreme Court. And as of today, surprise, surprise, the Supreme Court struck it down as inconstitutional. So that's where we are today.
That's a great point. All right, so let me bring up a couple. Oh, go ahead, unless you were going to say something, Kit, before I started.
Well, I think it's let's actually pull it up, because that way people can see what exactly more we're talking about, and I'll add in my commentary afterwards.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, because actually Brianna Joy Gray has a video that kind of sums up what you were just talking about, and I think you referred to this. It's a couple of videos, and let me play a little bit of this first one I have of Bree, where she kind of discusses this very thing of how this is kind of known by using this particular act for this was the weak version of trying to get this done. And this is why people believe it's set up.
Tribe affirmed that the White House is on safe legal footing, citing the HEROES Act of 2003 as a legislative...
Hang on. I cut off a couple of words in the beginning. Let me do that again.
This issue was debated in a Washington Post column last week. Harvard professor Lawrence Tribe affirmed that the White House is on safe legal footing, citing the HEROES Act of 2003 as a legislative hook that grants Biden executive authority to cancel student debt. But the HEROES Act is a post-9/11 law that allows the president to suspend or cancel debt in a national emergency. Right. Whether or not COVID still qualifies as an ongoing emergency is a hotly debated topic, with conservatives and Biden supporters alike aligning on a desire to put the pandemic...
Go ahead.
So that's the issue that I have been saying. If Biden wanted to use the HEROES Act to make the justification to cancel student debt, why didn't he do it in 2021 or make the executive order in 2021? What happened that year? We were in the midst of Delta and Omicron. You know, that would it was still weak, but that would have given more justification of what was going on that year. Biden used the HEROES Act to justify in 2022, when pretty much the pandemic was over and done with. And he himself said, in an
Right.
interview like in the fall, oh, we're done with the pandemic. So it begs to question, if he wanted to use the HEROES Act, why didn't he do it back in 2021 when we were all basically suffering from these two variants of COVID? So, and that's what people are not necessarily talking about, is the idea of like, again, he sat on his hands to wait for the most politically expedient moment when he needed it, the midterms, because he was not doing very well, so he needed a boost. And fortunately, young people in the naivete gave him that boost, only for the courts to get it struck down days later. So,
and the reason, to add to your point, the reason I'm fully on board with the understanding that this is a setup. This is him. Basically, they're on the same volleyball team as Joe Biden and in all the Supreme Court justices, and he just threw up for them to spike the ball. He's the one setting this up because, to your point, if you wanted to use this, it's through emergency powers that you're using it. You would use it during the emergency if that's what you're really trying to do. Mm-hmm. Now, this is another several hints that this is a setup, because you wait till the pandemic is almost not over, but you wait till it's almost subsided a lot to want to enact it right before the election. And tell me, I think on purpose he went out and said the pandemic is over, so that the courts can say, what do you mean? You say yourself that the pandemic was over, so how are you using this? It gives them another reason to say, then this is not under an emergency use. You yourself has said it. So these are so many hints to say, this guy wasn't really trying to have this happen. Go ahead, Colin and Kit.
And then to supplement that, like, I forgot which judge it was, basically referenced Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you. I was going to bring that up.
Who said that the president couldn't cancel student debt. And this is what the Republicans now are running with. Like Kevin McCarthy just tweeted out, thank you, Nancy Pelosi, for giving us the win here. So, I'm
going to bring that up. I'm going to bring that up as you talk. Keep going. Yes. I'm going to bring that up.
Basically, like, this was a whole mess all around, but Nancy Pelosi, in her whatever state of mind she's in right now, basically
senile. We don't have to be nice to these politicians. I'll be the mean one. I'll be the bad
guy. She didn't help matters. There you go.
So thank you to Nina Turner. I got this from Nina Turner. I would consider a friend of the show, or friend of my show. But here, this is from the ruling. As then Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi explained, people think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have the power. That has to be an act of Congress, end quote. So they included that in the ruling as being cited, and Nina points out, Nancy Pelosi was cited in the student loan ruling, unacceptable, is what Nina says.
I talked about this on my show last month. What Nancy said was very misleading. It's not that Congress has the authority. Congress has given authority to the Education Secretary under certain conditions to do this. And again, if the Cardona, if there was more of a broad cancellation, so meaning like just make it universal, that's how I interpret it, Cardona could have done it. And he didn't have to wait. You could do it because, like he could have done it at any time, really. So really this whole idea, and it kind of leaning to your thing, CJ, this was a setup. There was no reason for Biden to wait to cancel student loan debt. He could still do it today if he really wanted to. But so this is kind of what we were talking about this before we went live. it'll be interesting to see the spin of what Biden is going to say now, of what he's going to do, like in light of this decision, to give the illusion that he's going to do something when he could say today, I'm going to give an executive order to broadly cancel student debt under the Higher Education Act. If he doesn't say that today, this is nothing but a pony show for the 40 million people who have student loan debt.
It's not only a pony show. Look, I wanted to see this thing pass because there's a couple people close to me that were saying to me, like, look, I get what you're saying, Kit, but that $10,000, $20,000 of student loan debt forgiveness would mean the world to me. But this was just a way of Biden just to once again get people to sheepdog into the Democratic Party and get support. And he's not going to say anything, or either that he'll give a lackluster word salad answer. And everyone that's yelling about, oh, how could the Supreme Court do this? The Democrats, and we'll probably be talking about this later, were instrumental in creating the current Supreme Court that we're seeing here now. The Democrats, and here's the thing, they weren't being stupid. See, these lawmakers know what they're doing to some extent. They willingly allowed this to happen out of their own hubris, arrogance, and greed. Because now that this whole idea of student loan debt forgiveness is passed, you know what the Democrats are going to do? Not fight for you, but send out emails so that you could fundraise for them.
Right.
Give them money them now.
Right. And then along with that, Kit, people forget that Chuck Schumer basically made a deal with O'Connell to push in a lot of these right-wing lower circuit judges simply because they wanted to go on vacation, so they couldn't be bothered. So this started in a lower circuit court, this case regarding student loan debt. So, when it comes to actually doing, like, fucking us over, they're able to play 6D chess. But when we demand that they do something, that Democrats are like, we can't do anything because it's this reason, it's the parliamentarian, it's the Supreme Court, it's Joe Manchin, it's Chris. They come up with every single excuse. So, a lot of this stuff could have been prevented years ago on the Democratic side if they were really having they do have the foresight to fuck us over, but not thinking in terms of how are they going to, explain themselves out of the fucking. When they get
That's the hard part. That's the hard part, explaining yourself out of it. Oh, that's funny. All right, so let's listen to Bree. I'll try to play about a minute and a half of it before we comment. There's a lot of good information that we've already kind of discussed, but let's listen. She puts it kind of in a chronological way.
Lawrence Tribe affirmed that the White House is on safe legal footing, citing the HEROES Act of 2003 as a legislative hook that grants Biden executive authority to cancel student debt. But the HEROES Act is a post-9/11 law that allows the president to suspend or cancel debt in a national emergency. Whether or not COVID still qualifies as an ongoing emergency is a hotly debated topic, with conservatives and Biden supporters alike aligning on a desire to put the pandemic behind them. The former due to concerns about CDC overreach and politicization of COVID, and the latter for political reasons. Biden fares better in midterms if he can claim to have resolved the crisis. Of course, we are still technically, legally, in a declared state of COVID emergency. But given how the Supreme Court, the conservative Supreme Court, has ruled on COVID-related policies like mask mandates and the eviction moratorium, some are skeptical that they would uphold an executive order that depends on COVID being characterized as an ongoing crisis. I spoke to law professor Jed Sugarman, who took a skeptical view of Biden's legal standing on the Washington Post article on my own podcast, Bad Faith, on Monday, and he offered some more clarity. Both on bad faith and in a piece he wrote in The Atlantic last week, Sugarman argued that Biden should rely on the Higher Education Act of 1965 instead of the HEROES Act as a hook for his executive authority. Now, the language in the 1965 Act does not rely on COVID and aligns much better with Biden's own justifications for student debt relief, in which he has barely referenced COVID as a cause. The 1965 Act allows the Department of Education to, quote, enforce, pay, compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand, however acquired, including any equity or any right of redemption. Now, that language is squarely on point for Biden's debt relief plan. And it's no surprise, the 1965 Act was explicitly intended to resolve the kinds of education crises that predated the pandemic, and which Biden has rightly cited as the reason why student debt cancellation is needed. So why, some progressives are now asking, would Biden choose a less applicable statute that relies on a justification likely to rankle not only Supreme Court justices who are conservative, but liberal justices as well, in Jed's view? Well, this is the point at which this conversation tips into some speculation. One cynical argument is that Joe Biden wants to exploit the goodwill of young voters and older voters too, to carry Democrats through midterms, knowing that he'll never have to make good on his promise of partial debt cancellation. Similar arguments were put forward to explain why the Democrats seem to cave to Cori Bush's protests on the.
That is all set up. Go ahead if you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, again, this is something that I remember getting yelled at in 2022. Kit, you've got to trust and vote Democrats because they're going to do something about student debt. They're going to do it. And oh, hey, I reached out a couple of those people. You know what I'm getting? A whole lot of radio silence. And I've had a few just say, yeah, I really thought they'd do it. And I'm looking at them. I'm reading that message like, you poor victim of domestic abuse.
You're lucky.
Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
You're lucky you got that. I've been getting, we can't blame the Democrats at all because they tried. It's the Supreme Court that's the problem.
It's the Supreme Court. It's the Democrats' fault that we have the Supreme Court the way it is. Starting all the way with everybody's favorite liberal Democrat, Barack Obama, who could have done something about RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that racist of a woman. Yes, she was racist. She was a horrible individual who didn't know that her sun was setting, okay? She had her time. She was an old bag of bones. I mean, the fact that no one ever was like, hey, RBG, it's time to go. There's RBG, not to mention Obama could, I forget who was the other person he was going to appoint in, but he was as corporate as they can get, but it would have been a quote-unquote corporate liberal Democrat. Gee, liberals, you could have had it, but no, Obama didn't allow it to happen because he had the hubris and the audacity to think that Hill Dog was going to win the 2016 general election, and that didn't happen. And now, of course, we're seeing with the aftermath of that, Trump appointing in his judges, not giving a damn about how the Democrats feel. Obama, if he was in that same shoe, would have caved into the caved into the Republicans. And now we have Biden right now dealing with this Supreme Court and saying, oh, this court isn't natural. Your predecessor, Obama, helped create this Supreme Court. And guess what died under your administration? Biden, the Democrat who's going to return the soul back to the country. Hey, vote blue no matter who. This one's for you because you hack frauds could never, ever step up. Number one, Roe v. Wade died under your watch. Affirmative action died under a Democrat's watch. And hey, student debt forgiveness. Oh, that's not going to happen. So once again, how are you going to come at me or anyone else?
Marriage rights?
Yes,
gay marriage rights too. That's under. It's so much bad stuff. It's like, man, how much bad stuff that too? Like, so I just wanted to make sure. Go ahead.
Well, what I want to say, and I'll finish my thought on this is all this stuff. If this happened under Trump, I know every single hack, fraud, social justice warrior would be protesting in the street. But now, I don't see you. Where are you?
You know what? But Kit, you know what? And CJ just adds to your point where it's being set up because they want things to be so bad that the threat of like student loan debt, affirmative action, possibly gay marriage, the Democrats want this to be so bad that it will make people be forced to vote for them, even though they haven't completed on any of the promises that they have made. So this is kind of playing into their hands. They don't have to promise you to do anything if we think that things are going to be so desperate under the Supreme Court and the Republicans that you're just going to vote for them without getting any demands from them.
That has to be the strategy. They just kind of sit back and go, look what the Republicans will do if you guys don't vote for us. Look,
Right.
that's all they got to do. Look.
Right.
Look. It's either us. We know we're terrible. I know I'm a ghoul, but look at them. That's literally their strategy. Go ahead.
I think for most people, that's enough.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. Hold on. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, see, and there's so many people that are easily scared. You know, it really says a lot about our fellow Americans that are so scared of, oh no, now if Trump gets in, it's going to be worse. Well, gee, the Democrats were supposed to prevent this kind of stuff from happening, quote unquote, right? They're the better party, right, liberals? Well, that didn't happen. And I see you already pulling up the video. Now, again, just out of something that I noted in this video that INN posted, I know, Colin, you were there. You speak for 10 seconds. You ask a very direct question. Listen to how long it takes for her to give an answer. Do you even get an answer out of this video? I mean, it's a definition of a word salad right here. The only thing coherent about it is your 10 to 12 seconds asking the goddamn question.
All right, let's see. You want to preface this, Colin, also, this video, so people know what this is?
At the Squad Victory Fun event that they hosted.
Victory Fun.
That they hosted last month. I paid $75 to attend. So I basically, because Ayanna started speaking about student loan debt, this was toward the end of the night, and this was a room full of PMCs, and I figured, you know, a lot of them are in student loan debt. So I figured it was probably a good time to ask her, even though I didn't have the authority to question her regarding the memo that she wrote along with Senator Warren about her pushing Biden to use the Higher Education Act to cancel student loan debt instead of the HEROES Act. So that's where I was at in regards to this clip.
And this is out. So keep in mind the ruling as you listen to what Ayanna Pressley says.
Congressman, didn't you give a memo to Biden with Senator Warren regarding student debt to tell him to use the Higher Education Act?
Let me just say this, because I want to get in trouble if I start taking questions from the floor, okay? But I want to say on student debt and where that fight stands right now, it is in the Supreme Court. By the way, expand the courts. Reform the courts, expand the courts. And it's not that radical, y'all. It's precedent. It's been done 6 times before. It's far right, it's extremist, it's imbalanced, and they are causing great harm. That is where the student debt issue is right now. But that being said, we're all organizers, and no organizer goes into a fight without a contingency plan. We have them, but I'm not ready to see defeat here because the legal case is sound. The legal case is sound. So, you know,
the legal case is sound. She keeps saying this.
We need that SpongeBob meme come up 5 minutes later.
The legal case is sound. She kept saying this throughout the video because they're telling themselves this lie. Right. The way that they're saying it is not to inform. It's like, yeah, you know how you say, I can do this. I can do this. It's like that. It's like you're convincing yourself. Well, let's listen a little more and laugh a little more, and then we'll comment.
Hold on. Wait, just real quick, because I remember her saying in this video that she didn't want to get in trouble because Hakeem Jeffries or something right there, because obviously he's right now the leader of the Democratic Party in the House. And I know she says I don't want to get in trouble because look at that death glare that AOC's giving to Ayanna Pressley. It's like you better not screw this up. 5 years of AOC. 5 years of AOC right now, folks. That's how long we've been dealing with AOC. It feels longer than that for some reason.
Because of all the bad things, but let's try to get through it. Let's listen.
That was a motivating issue in the midterms for many. This is a transformational, consequential issue, and we're not giving up this fight.
Okay.
So in the fact that we made it this far, first they said the president didn't have the authority. Then they said it would be regressive in impact and only benefit white graduate students.
A pause there.
Schools. And we have challenged and proven all of that wrong. This is a huge coalition of impacted borrowers, civil rights organizations, union workers, presidents, tradesmen and women. But my point is the progress that has been made is because of the movement. So I'll just close by saying this. It is progress. And listen, 60 million people have already benefited from this relief. Provided the Supreme Court follows the letter of the law, 1 in 4 Black borrowers will have their debt zeroed out completely. This is 40+ million people.
So why didn't the Democratic Party and Joe Biden then provide relief for that very important constituency that you're pointing out, the Black constituency, I should say, that put him in office, that put him over the line? Then why isn't he using a better legal theory that everybody is saying is the higher education theory? Why isn't he using that to make sure he keeps those voters?
Remember a certain president who said that if you went to HBCU, you would have your debt forgiven. That was a thing for a hot minute.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Where's the follow through on that? But I said this on this panel the last time I was here, but you notice how Ayanna said, they said that student loan debt can be forgiven. It's not a they, it's a she. It was Nancy Pelosi, her former boss, who said that. Mm-hmm. So you notice how vague even in her word salad she is in terms of not calling out. And like she even said at the beginning, oh, I can't speak on this because I'm going to get you in trouble. Like, who's going to get you in trouble? Who?
They weren't supposed to speak to the people.
Right.
Exactly. You guys, they were supposed to not let you talk. That was her point.
That's a room of PMCs. She should have felt fairly safe to talk to a room of PMCs because they're going to eat every word that generally that they're going to say.
Do you want to know why they're probably so scared and frightened in answering that question? Is because, again, this quote unquote victory fund by the squad. The squad is supposedly the most powerful Democratic lawmakers we've seen, at least according to the Vote Blue, no matter who people. Why do a victory fund? Because they need a room of yes people to say, oh, we spoke to all these individuals. However, they weren't expecting a free thinker to walk in there and actually ask them a legitimately hard question. You caught them off guard. You scared them, which is why when I had you on the show, you mentioned that one of their handlers came by and tapped you on the shoulder and be like, hey, watch it with the questions.
Right. Right.
Wait, what did he say to you?
Basically, the hired help, because this was the last conversation that I asked before that when Jamal Bowman started speaking regarding guns. Like I was calling out then. And at that point, the hired help came over to me and said, you gotta chill with the questions. So I knew it was kind of I kind of made any more. And then after this exchange, I left because actually I had to leave because I had to stream. So I was running late. But yeah, I think you're right, Kit. It's the idea that, it was very safe. And getting donations from people who are not going to critically critique them or, would be a safe bait to ensure that they're going to get the money that they need in order to finance their campaigns. And they've said so as much, during this whole thing. They were basically like, we need to do everything as we can to keep the squad in office because they're fighting for you. So give us your money to ensure that they stay.
That's essentially going to be the selling point.
Joke. That's what they were saying and kept saying throughout the night.
And just quickly, I want to read this tweet because I don't know either of your opinions on expanding the court, and I like to go in blind like this so that if we have differences, we can really talk. But my point on the why I call it the nonsense of expanding the court is because it's the same corporate parties that's going to be nominating the same people. Right. So are you going to, instead of having 9 terrible people, we're going to have 12 terrible people, or I guess you got to have an odd number, 13 terrible people. So that's why I call it the nonsense of expanding the court. And then on the other hand, not the other hand, but another point is, why wouldn't the Republicans just do the same thing? Why wouldn't they just expand when they get in power? Go ahead if either one of you want to chime in.
The idea of expanding the court is essentially a non-starter because Joe Biden basically said in an interview he wasn't going to do it because it would become too political. Like, it's too politically charging to do it. So for me, it's like,
case closed. Case closed.
Well, another thing too about talking about expanding the court. I mean, look at how FDR tried to do it. I mean, it ended up being held by his own party members because there were other party members that didn't want to expand the Supreme Court, and this is when FDR was reelected into office. So this whole idea of expanding the court, okay, great, you're expanding the court. How many justices? And now all of a sudden you're setting a precedent that other presidents can do that, be it potential Democratic presidents or Republican presidents. So that way you can have the overall majority. Next thing you know, we have 2,000 Supreme Court justices. What's the number? What's it going to be? And in which I have to say to these elected representatives, maybe you guys can actually finally reform that third branch of the government, because what you have are people being appointed into office. Maybe have the American people choose who the next Supreme Court justice will be. Maybe instead of it being selected by politicians, it should be the people to do that. And on top of that as well, maybe not have them there for indefinite times like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who held on to it because she had nothing but ego, pride, and vanity, because that old bag doesn't have a sense of understanding that, hey, her time is up. Okay? And yes, I'm being mean to these old people because they deserve to be yelled at. Another thing, too, to point out, term limits. Is that too much to ask for? Because these people are in power for so long that they're getting comfortable. They're getting weak. So maybe politicians, instead of expanding the court, maybe it's finally time to do something about the courts and realizing that it's an antiquated model that needs much reform.